Our Bible word is Revelation 21 verses 6 to 7. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give of the fountain of the water of life freely to him who thirsts. He who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. So, let's first look at the historical context of the book of Revelation. So, the book of Revelation, so it's a book full of mystery. It's very confusing for many. And of course, for many it's about the end of the world, etc. But we must understand the book of Revelation as an apocalypse. Of course, in modern thinking, apocalypse refers to the end of the world, World War III, whatever it may be. Forget about that. It has nothing to do with the biblical apocalypse or the book of Revelation. Apocalypse refers to a literary genre. In other words, it's a way of writing. And the writing it's the word apokalypsis in Greek. It refers to unveiling. In other words, what was secret before, or what exists in the secret world, the hidden world, in other words, God's world, is now revealed to his people. And now a seer or a prophet or a man who experiences this vision or whatever, he relates this. He unveils it. He brings it to people to understand the hidden nature, or those things, hidden things that we don't see around us. And that's important for the book of Revelation, because the book of Revelation is basically saying that the Roman Empire is not in control of the world. God is in control of the world. So appearances is very deceiving. The true power behind the world is God. And this is what actually is revealed through the prophet or the seer who communicates this book. And if we go to the beginning, we'll see here it's addressed to those 7 congregations of Asia Minor. And if you look at the map on screen, you'll see that it would have also been the road that this letter carrier would have traveled. He first would have gone to Ephesus, then he would have gone to Smyrna, and then to Pergamos, and then to Thyatira, and then to Sardis, Philadelphia, and eventually to Laodicea. And these 7 congregations were located in Asia Minor, that's modern-day Turkey. And now the seer specifically addresses them, and most scholars would date the book of Revelation to the time of the Emperor Domitian, and he ruled from 81 to 96 AD. So most scholars will date the book of Revelation to the 90s AD. And there were various circumstances, or there was a crisis that faced these congregations in Asia Minor. That's why the seer wrote to them also, based on his vision that he also saw. And he was, of course, located very close to these congregations, just to the west of Asia Minor. You'll see there's the island of Patmos. And that's where this John, where he was imprisoned as a witness for Jesus. And this is where he had this vision. And this is from where he wrote this letter also. So what was this crisis that John addressed? There are mainly 3 that we'll focus on now. Number 1, it's the emperor cult. And what I'm referring to here is it's the worship of the Roman emperors, the worship of the Roman Caesars. Now, of course, the Roman Empire spanned across big parts of the Mediterranean world. And the Romans said, well, the gods have chosen us to rule. We are the best of all peoples. We rule you. We are your betters. You must just keep quiet and listen to us. So that would have been the Roman understanding. But part of this Roman understanding was also that the Roman emperor was seen as divine. And he had all these titles associated with him. And he was called Son of God, or God of God, or Lord, or Savior. And especially in the eastern part of the empire, especially there where these congregations of Asia Minor were located, there was very enthusiastic worship of the emperor. In many places all over the ancient Roman Empire, temples were built for the Roman emperor, for Rome, where Rome was seen as divine, where Romans, and also the Roman emperor specifically, was seen as divine. And also at this time, just before the book of Revelation was written, an actual new temple dedicated to the Caesar or emperor cult was built in Ephesus. And it's known as the Temple of the Sebastoi, or the Temple of the Revered. And this refers to the Flavian dynasty. In other words, the Emperor Titus, and also the present Emperor Domitian, where they were also kind of seen as divine and worshipped. Sacrifices were made to them. Believe it or not, that is what happened at this time. And also here, the people of Asia Minor, the cities, the ruling elite, they gathered money. They sponsored the construction of this temple. They facilitated the worship of the emperor, which is also called the beast in the book of Revelation. And so there was a local enthusiasm for this emperor cult. We must understand this power of the Roman Empire. They built roads wherever they went. They were masters of the land. And also on these Roman roads were inscriptions referring to this deified emperor, or the emperor that's divine. Also, after the roads, they would build temples. These temples dedicated to Caesar. Also inscriptions all over the place would be put up, referring to the Caesar who is divine, the Son of God, etc. And then after the temples, all these other plans of technology would follow. For example, like aqueducts. Romans will build aqueducts, and because remember, they're masters of the land, and they would bring water to towns and urban centers. And after the aqueducts, they would build bathhouses and fountains and whatever else, showing all these subjects. You see, this is the Roman way. The emperor, the divine Son of God, has brought you all these blessings. And also at our time, the Emperor Domitian, he was also referred to as Lord, he, according to Roman historians, he demanded to be addressed as Lord and God. So there was this blasphemy. If you read Revelation, it's this harlot, or this big city called Babylon, etc., is full of blasphemy. It refers to Rome. It refers to the emperor cult and the blasphemous titles. That's why the Lord and God, Domitian, is contrasted with Jesus, the true Son of God, the true Lord. He's also called the Lamb of God. So we have a contrast here between two kind of empires, the empire of the Romans and the empire and the kingdom of Jesus Christ that he brought to us. So that was the first big issue, the emperor cult. The second big issue is complacency. If you read those letters to the congregations, people became complacent, and the author warns them, you're now cooperating with this beast. In other words, the Roman Empire. Because the Roman Empire brought wealth, it brought prosperity, economic opportunity, and it was all facilitated by this beast. In other words, the Roman Empire. It's the Roman Empire who brought wealth and the roads and the bathhouses, etc. Also on the coins, commerce, there's images of the Roman emperor there with all these blasphemous titles like Son of God or God, etc. And the author of Revelation says, withdraw from it. Don't participate in this. If we go specifically to chapter 17, verses 6, he refers there to Babylon, or the harlot. This is a reference to Rome and the whole system, economical system, political system, religious system, social and civic system that she represented. He tells them, come out of her. He says, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. He tells Christians, this is what persecuted the Christians in Rome and who killed all the Christians. And this refers to the time of Nero, when so many Christians were put to death. But also in 18 verses 4, he specifically tells them, the Christians, withdraw, come out of her, do not participate in this whole system which the Roman Empire represents. It says there, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. So he's telling Christians, you cannot engage with the Roman Empire and participate in events. Because remember, at this time also there were trade guilds. And they would normally dedicate inscriptions to the emperor in Rome. They will make statues, etc. to the emperor in Rome. And they will offer libations and even worship to the emperor in Rome. It's a bit like you going to a board meeting, and inside in your boardroom there's a inscription or a statue of maybe somehow the president, maybe we form part of that country's empire, and it says, Hail President so-and-so, the divine Son of God, benefactor, our Lord. And you worship him because he's brought you the business and he's brought prosperity. He's representative of the gods. He's divine, this man. And you as a Christian, if you're sitting in there, you will not participate in it. Or if you do not participate in it, you'll lose your job. So a similar thing is happening in the ancient world. There were these trade guilds and people involved in commerce, etc., who's in civic life, part of the city, the town, everything is orientated towards the Roman Empire, the Roman Emperor. And it's the whole system, politics, economics, religion, civic life, social life, everything is immersed or infected with this emperor cult, this emperor worship. And now you as a Christian, if you do not participate in it, you can't work, you can't eat. But here the author of Revelation says you cannot participate in it. You must withdraw. Come out of her, my people. Because the system is full of blasphemy and idolatry and witchcraft. And so that was the second biggest problem. It's this accommodation of this paganism, of this whole system that the Roman Empire brought about. So this accommodation to the values of the Roman Empire, Christians cannot do that. They must withdraw themselves. Lastly, it's about persecution of Christians. There was no big persecution at this time. But the author warns there's a serious time of persecution that's coming. Be prepared for this. And the Christians were already persecuted in the past. At the time of Nero, they were slaughtered by Nero in Rome already before. But even worse time of persecution is coming for Christians. And this is what the author also warns about. Now, if we look at our textual unit, we are dealing with chapters 21 to 22, and this deals with the future, deals with the new heaven and the new earth. And what has been promised to those who conquer or who overcome. If you go read those 7 letters to the congregations, all those promises were made to them. You who overcome. You can also translate it as you who conquer. Remember, God's people, they are depicted as this army of God. And of course, it's to account to the Roman army and their legions and the power and might of the Roman Empire. But now, chapter 21, it's introduced by, now I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And this is the last in a series of what the prophet or the seer explains by saying, I saw. He uses exact words also in reference to the return or the parousia of Jesus. And Armageddon, that's where Christ will defeat the forces of the beast. And also language of that, of the arrival of the millennial kingdom. And final judgment. And now the last one is where the seer sees the arrival of the new heaven and new earth. Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. So this new heaven and new earth, it's a whole new reality that God will create. And we must also understand here that Revelation draws a lot here on the language from Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, because this new heaven and new earth is mentioned in Isaiah 65 and also 66. And especially verses 1 to 8 here, there are many allusions and references and quotations to Isaiah. Also the whole book of Revelation makes many quotes and allusions to the book of the prophets. Also Ezekiel and Zechariah, etc. But God will create a new reality. This is where heaven and earth will be united. And God will dwell in this Jerusalem. And this, the next verse we read there, then John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. So this is the descent of this New Jerusalem. Of course, this is a symbol for God's presence. We must be careful to take John's language literally, and it will be a real city the way he describes it. It symbolizes God's presence. It will come down, and it's where heaven and earth will meet. God will be among his people. That's what it symbolizes. But the way he describes this New Jerusalem, think of it as the new capital of the world. Because if we read Revelation, think of it, this is a story of two cities. On the one hand, there's Rome, the capital city of the Roman Empire, and of course also called the Great Harlot, and Babylon. And in opposition to this city is Jerusalem. This is the new Jerusalem that comes from, or descends down from heaven. So Revelation is the story of two cities. As things now appear, it appears that Rome is in control. And Rome was the capital of the empire and controls and dominates everything. But behind the scenes, the real power, who's really in control, is God. And of course, that's where the heavenly Jerusalem is. That's the true capital, the center of power of the whole cosmos, of the earth and everything. So these two cities are set up against each other in the book of Revelation. We must also understand when we read it, we must place ourselves in the first century context of these believers. They were in the midst of the Roman Empire. That was their reality. So we must be sympathetic with their cultural and historical context, also to understand Revelation and what it's communicating. So think of yourself as being in the first century, in the 90s AD, in the Asia Minor there, where you are surrounded and immersed by the emperor cult and the worship of the emperor, etc., and the whole economic system that it represents. So Revelation puts Rome, Babylon against the New Jerusalem. If we go read chapters 17 to 19, that's where Rome is described, because Rome is filled with arrogance. It's filled with blasphemy. All these divine titles that's given to the emperor. It has a reign of violence. It's cruel the way it treats people in its empire. It also murdered the saints. It killed Christians already, probably referring to the time of Nero and his persecution of Christians. Also its wealth and its economic exploitation, its greed. It's filled with witchcraft. And chapters 17 to 19 also speak of Babylon, or Rome's destruction, that its power and influence and domination of the world will come to an end. And this is contrasted in chapters 21 to 22 with the New Jerusalem. And this New Jerusalem will be a place of healing. It will be a place of purity, of life, of restoration, of fellowship with God. And it will be a reign of justice and peace. It will be a completely different type of empire. So we have Babylon that symbolizes and represents this evil empire versus God's empire that will come and be established on the earth. And this New Jerusalem, this will become the capital of this empire of God. And it's a massive city. It's in the shape of a cube. And it's also symbolic of the Holy of Holies in the temple, because the Holy of Holies in the temple, where the Ark of the Covenant used to be, was the shape of a cube. And now it says this New Jerusalem, in the form of a cube, it will be approximately 2,400 kilometers long and wide and high. So it's a massive city. So it symbolizes God's control, His sovereign rule and reign over the world. This is the capital city of the new empire, the new order of things, of the eternal kingdom to come. So that's what it symbolizes. And it also symbolizes God's presence among His people. Because if you go to verses 3, it says there, "And I heard a loud voice," that's probably an angel speaking now, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and He will dwell with them, and they shall be His people." So it symbolizes the way that God was present, especially in the Holy of Holies in the temple. Now He will be present personally in this New Jerusalem. God will dwell. He will tabernacle with His people. Similar language is used of Jesus in the Gospel of John. Jesus will dwell or tabernacle with tabernacled with His people on earth. So, but God, He's coming down and He will have fellowship. It will be like Eden restored. This is the temple. But there will be no specific temple, because God is the temple, the city, and God is present within the city to have fellowship with His people. And of course, this New Jerusalem, it symbolizes both the people themselves, and it also symbolizes God's fellowship with His people. And the benefits of this fellowship, as we read there in verse 4, "And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away." Now in the next verse it says, "Behold, I make all things new." This is experiencing almost in the present, this promise, this anticipation of God. Now He will restore, how He's going to make all of creation new when we have this intimate fellowship with God. And then God then asserts, "I am in control of history. Everything was created by me, and everything will become completed in me." And that's also our Bible word, specifically verses 6. "And He said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." In other words, I'm in control. I did this. This is my work, my creation, and now its end. In other words, the goal of creation is reaching its fulfillment in me, the sovereign Lord. And of course, also similar language is also applied to Jesus. Jesus is also referred to as the Alpha and Omega, and the beginning and the end. If we go there to especially chapter 22 verses 13, again, very language similar to what we find in Isaiah 44 and 48. And now God is in control. He's the Alpha and Omega. And in verse 7, God also now lays down a challenge. Are you going to conquer? Are you going to overcome? Or are you going to be a coward and give in to this pressure, this whole system that Rome represents, to give in to its blasphemy, etc.?
Verse 7 it says, "He who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son." But this is a contrast now to those who are cowards, those who do not remain faithful to Jesus. But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So this is about perseverance. Those who persevere, they conquer, they overcome. They will enter the city, this new Jerusalem, and have this fellowship with God. But it's about these two cities. Rome, who appears to be in control, but who's really in control is God, symbolized by this new Jerusalem that will descend and come down, and where heaven and earth will meet, and where all the nations of the world will experience eternal fellowship with God.